Hello, everyone. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about this World Health Organization report that was released on March 9th, 2023, about salt intake. So they released a 99-page report here, and you can get the full link on the WHO's website. But here's a synopsis of it. They wanted to reduce global sodium intake by about 30% by 2025 through a lot of health policy changes, but they're not on track. And they were saying that basically they suspect that they could save an estimated 7 million lives globally by 2023 by implementing very cheap, cost-effective sodium reduction policies. Today, only 9 countries, and they are Brazil, Chile, Czech Republic, Lithuania, Malaysia, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Spain, and Uruguay, have a comprehensive package of recommended policies to reduce sodium intake. And so, sodium intake has been found to contribute to a bunch of bad things like cancer, stroke, heart attack, other health problems. And the global average salt intake is almost 11 grams a day, which is more than twice the amount that's recommended by the WHO, which is 5 grams of salt a day, which is about 1 teaspoon of salt per person per day. And it is well known that it's associated with high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, that kind of stuff. But there's also emerging evidence that links it to gastric cancer, obesity, osteoporosis, and kidney disease. So what they want people to do, they want countries to do, is kind of mandate things to reformulate foods to contain less salt and set targets for the amount of sodium in foods and meals, and then establish public food procurement policies that limit sodium in public institutions like hospitals and schools and workplaces and nursing homes. They want very robust labeling of sodium content, and then behavior change communication, mass media campaigns to reduce salt and sodium consumption. Now, this may seem a little familiar to a lot of people because a long time ago, what happened is they really went on the attack on fats, and they wanted to reduce fats in foods, so they wanted low-fat foods. They wanted to get rid of especially saturated fats, and these policies were generally correct. But what happened was they had an unintended consequence. So basically, when they enforced these low fat rules and wanted to make things low fat, when you take fat out of food, food generally tastes terrible. And so what food companies did is they replaced the fat with sugar, and then sugar consumption went through the roof, which was possibly worse than the fat consumption. Now, the main problem with all this stuff is that we live in a society that has a lot of processed foods, and processed foods just have to use a lot of salt for them to taste good because they're just packaged and stuff. So I wanted to kind of peruse this report and look at the various countries. So towards the end, they list the various countries, and you can see them here. And you see like how many grams per day of salt different countries eat. And you can see that some countries like Algeria are doing pretty well. Um, and let's see, Bosnia has 13, so not so good. So a lot of Eastern European, Bulgaria also 13. Cameroon is 6.9, which is pretty good. I'm trying to find like the highest and the lowest. Okay, here's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, 5.7. So they're pretty low. I'm trying to find this maybe a lower one. No. Okay, Hungary, 14.3, so pretty bad. I think I saw that up here. Yeah, China is the worst, 17.7 grams, almost more than 3 times the recommended daily dosage of salt in China. The African countries tend to do well. Kenya 6.1. And this probably has to do with the lack of penetration of processed foods and fast food restaurants and that kind of stuff in those countries. Korea is not doing so well at like 12 point something. Yeah, Republic of Korea 12.3. So yeah, not doing so good. And let's look at the United States. United States is 8.9. So not terrible, kind of middle of the road. And then this is the scores that people get. So America is doing pretty well on the policy standpoint, but not as good as Uruguay. This is kind of interesting because for most of human history, salt was very hard to find and it was very valuable. It was referred to as white gold during the Roman times and Middle Ages because it was so valuable. And soldiers in the Roman army were sometimes paid in salt instead of money, and their monthly allowance was called the salariums, sal being the Latin word for salt. And this Latin word can be recognized in the French word salary. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce that in French, but eventually it made it to the English language as the word salary. So salary comes from salt. And that's where we get the term not worth his salt. It's saying that someone's work, someone's value of his work is not worth what he's getting paid. So salt was extremely valuable for most of human history because sodium is one of the dominant ions in the human body, especially in blood and extracellular fluid. It is the most abundant ion, and you need sodium. Your body absolutely will not function without sodium, and you have about 92 grams of sodium in your entire body. So you don't need a lot of sodium. So look at if you look at China's intake, they are eating in about 4 days the total amount of sodium in their body. So they're having to excrete quite a bit of sodium to maintain balance. Now the so for most of human history, the problem was not having enough access to salt. So salt was hard to come by. Now we have the opposite problem. Salt is so cheap and abundant, and when something is important, your body is physiologically programmed to want it. So that's why salt tastes good to us. Like we want it. Like if you're out in the woods and you find something salty, you want to eat it. You want to be able to tank up on it because you're not going to be able to find that very well again. So our body naturally craves salt, and the abundance of cheap salt in modern times with our physiologic desire for salt is a bad combination. We like it, it tastes good to us, so we just overdo it at this point. Um, Now, one way you can mitigate that is that you can exercise. And when you exercise a lot, especially if you sweat a lot, it's a way of excreting sodium. So if you've gone for a run, or if you've exercised a lot and sweated a lot, you get this like little white crust on your skin when it dries, and that's just the salt leaving your body. And in fact, people that exercise a lot may need to eat a little extra salt. Also, although I think that's very rare, I think most people in modern society eat so much salt that you don't need to supplement more salt, even if you are exercising quite a bit, unless you're way in the fringes. Okay, so that's just something I want to talk to you guys about. Most Americans are eating close to double the amount of salt. The salt isn't because you're using a salt shaker and putting it on the food yourself. The salt is in the food you're eating. If you go out to a restaurant, most of them are very high in sodium because it just tastes better. And kind of the flip side of the thing is if you were to reduce the amount of salt you eat, then your body would get used to it and you would need less salt to get the same amount of flavor. And so you just get habituated to a higher salt level and you need more salt for food to taste good. And it just kind of builds up a tolerance. So if you back up on the salt, things that used to taste good to you will taste too salty to you. And then you can make food taste good with less salt. So that's something we should all strive for. And also understand that doing a lot of exercise where you sweat a lot is going to help mitigate some of the dangers of uh, having too much salt because we're all having too much salt. All right. Thanks for watching and look forward to your comments.